Hey, good evening and welcome to A Real Point of View. I am your host, Greg Morgan, and I am the real movie guy. And I'm joined by my two co hosts, the movie maven herself, Miss Karen D., and the man
Hello,
who doesn't
hello.
make a bad movie, Mr. Steven C. Hi, guys. Welcome back. We've kind of had a hiatus, and glad to be back uh, to the fold, as it were, um, talking about movies and being able to share that with our fans and or uh, new people
We
that
have
are.
fans?
Yes, we actually do have fans.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Well, no, it isn't. You can buy any fans at any store. I got some fans
Oh,
from Walmart and
you
some fans from
mean
Target. And
fans.
exactly, we have fans all over the place. I got some fans I'm going to start using because the weather here where I am is starting to get a little bit hotter all the time. So,
Uh-huh. Very
well,
deft.
but welcome everybody, and we're going to talk about our subject tonight is kids in movies, but more along the subject line of blame it on the kids. Why are we blaming things on the kids? Um, Let me ask Steve. Why are we blaming stuff on kids in our segment today, Steve?
Well, sometimes not necessarily because they want to, not necessarily because they have the urge to, but sometimes kids just make poor decisions and it results in a whole lot of things going bad for a whole lot of people. And that's why we blame it on the kids. There's sometimes it's inadvertent, and then sometimes it's just they're being bad. And you know, that's why we're blaming it on the kids today.
I like that, Steve. That's kind of what I think about it too. Kids sometimes are put in precarious situations, and sometimes it's because the families do it, the parents do it, the neighborhood, the community around them do it. But sometimes, like you said, it's the kids. It's the kids who are the what's the word I'm looking for? The catalyst
Mm.
of things that are going to happen and things that happen, whether they mean it or not. Like you said, what's your take on it, Karen?
Well, I kind of agree, but I also think, movies sort of mine all of this sort of these dynamics because you've got adults who can't, I mean, they can't be responsible for crushing the spirit of a child by saying what they really think. So they're sort of hamstrung in how they react. And then you've got kids who are sort of who are generally presumed to be acting without artifice, without ulterior motives, but from just either pure instinct or from pure heart or from a desire, to help or to get back at, but it's without a lot of strategy or, like I said, artifice, whereas adults come to the table with all sorts of ulterior motives and preconceived notions and prejudices and biases and all this other stuff. So that kind of stuff can be, those dynamics between adults and children can be mined for comedy or tragedy or in between.
Now, to give you a good example of something like this, and it's not really when we'll use it for the show, but there's a movie that my wife used to watch constantly over time, year after year, and a movie that we've mentioned on our show before. But a very good example of that is The Bad Seed. So, where you have a young girl who manipulates everything and she makes it seem like it's the adults who are making these decisions, but in all true essence, she's the one who um, is the diabolical one. She's the one who um, facilitates everything that happens in that film. So, hopefully, we have a few more films this week that we can talk about that give you some example of how kids are the manipulators, the ones who are manipulated, and because of their presence, even things occur that would have never necessarily happened. And because of that, we have to blame it on the kids because if those kids weren't in these situations, then maybe some of these things might not have occurred. So, why don't we go ahead and start with you, Karen? What movies did you have? And give us an idea of why we're blaming it on the kids.
Okay, well, I have two movies today. The first one that I want to talk about is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and the second one is Witness. So, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a 1986 movie, and to me, it's kind of the quintessential 80s movie. It's a comedy. It stars Matthew Broderick. It stars Alan Ruck, Mia Sara. Um, Jeffrey Jones, Jennifer Grey, and a host of others. Charlie Sheen even has a role in this movie as a like a teenager who's in a police station. So Matthew Broderick plays Ferris Bueller, who's this very savvy kid who really bored, and I think he's acting out of just incredible boredom. But he and his best friend Alan Ruck, who plays Cameron Fry, they're in their senior year of high school, and they kind of want to have some fun, or actually Ferris Bueller kind of wants to have some fun because they're all going to separate schools. Ferris Bueller has a girlfriend who's played by Mia Sara. She plays Sloane Peterson. And the three of them kind of hang out together. And it's like, well, we're going off to school. We're going to different schools. We should just make it a point to have fun one of these days before we're all separated. And Ferris Bueller decides he needs a day off from school. So, in classic fashion, he decides to pretend to be sick. But what provides the comedy is what provides the comedy are all the people who know he's faking. They suspect something's going on, but they don't know quite what it is. Jeffrey Jones plays Ed Rooney, who's the principal, who's sure the Ferris Bueller is faking being sick. Jennifer Grey plays Jeannie Bueller, his sister, and she knows he's faking, but she has no idea of how to catch him, but she knows he is faking. And she doesn't really like her brother because her brother's always putting one over on everybody, and she can't get away with anything. So, so that provides quite a bit of antagonism and definitely a source of comedy. What I liked about this movie, I'm not a huge fan of coming of age movies. I never have been. But this movie, I really like this movie mainly because it's really well written. It's written, the writer's John Hughes, and he directed the movie. And he's sort of like the archetypal director for teen angst type movies, especially in the 80s. He's like your go-to guy if you want a movie about teen angst. And this movie is very well written, in my opinion. And the characters are stock characters. You've got Jeffrey Jones, who's amazing as the principal. I mean, because this is like a very stereotypical character, but he infuses the character with just so much righteous outrage. You can't help but laugh. And you kind of, and when you're looking at Matthew Broderick, who plays Ferris Bueller with such whimsy and just, he has this amazing devil may care attitude. And it just really pulls you in, even though by all that's right and holy, you really shouldn't like him. He's a smart aleck. He's kind of, arrogant. But it's like, nah, you forgive all that. Even if it's true, the kid just wants a day off. What's so wrong with that? Especially because he's going off to school. He may not see these really close friends of his again. I mean, he may end up with a different girlfriend. She may end up with a different boyfriend. He may end up with a different best friend. Why not have like one day where you just kind of say to hell with it and have some fun? What's so wrong with that? And maybe everybody should have a day like that. I think that's why we kind of get sucked in, because it's like, no, you're not ever supposed to cut school, except that sometimes life might actually be more important than school. So you kind of get, I mean, to me, you just kind of get swept along. The classic sort of dichotomy between what you should do and what you want to do. And sometimes what you want to do makes a lot more sense than what you ought to do. So that's why I like this movie. And there's a lot of music and just completely implausible situations. At one time, Ferris Bueller's like leading like the whole city of Chicago, it seems, in like a musical interlude, and he it the other thing I really like is the way John Hughes has the Ferris Bueller character sort of winking constantly at the audience. So the audience is totally brought into the scheme from the beginning. And that's cool. It's like you're in on the joke, you know it's the joke. And so it's kind of funny watching everybody else scramble trying to figure out whether there's a joke or not, or is this kid really bad? And you know Ferris Bueller's not really bad. He's a good kid. He's probably done most things right. It's just he's a kid, so he kind of, he's acting like a kid in this one instance. And there's a side plot about his best friend who has a very like mean-spirited father who's wealthy, and they borrow his father's Ferrari to go to Chicago. That's their whole shit. They live in the suburbs of Chicago and they want to go to Chicago, downtown Chicago, for the day. But of course the Ferrari gets completely mucked up. So there's that side plot. It's a feel good movie. It's very much a feel good movie. It Matthew Broderick was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actor, and deservedly so. He really carries the movie, but not because the other people in the movie don't lift their required loads. They do. Everybody does. It's just the movie's really about Ferris Bueller. Ben Stein plays an economics teacher who has made a career out of being deadpan. And that started with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That was like the thing. And he's mined that for acting gold and probably a lot of money ever since, because that's the only character he pretty much ever plays, no matter where you see him. Uh, so, but it's just a lot of fun. Why would I blame this on the kid? Well, the kid wanted a day off, and there was just so much disruption and so much just um, scrambling and just people having to stop what they're doing, and they don't know whether to worry about Ferris or whether to punish him or whether to laugh at him. And it's just complete chaos. Thank you, Ferris Bueller. That's why we blame it on the kid.
Very cool. Well, we'll come back to your second movie in a moment. Did you have anything to say about Ferris Bueller, Steve?
It's an awesome movie. I know a lot of us, well, me personally, uh, wanted to do what he did and just go and basically have an adventure that didn't involve you seriously getting in trouble.
Right.
But, movie land. And it's a great movie. The fourth wall breaks where he's focusing completely on the audience and trying to get you as deep into this as he is really good. It's very clean cut of who the villain is supposed to be in this, but the kid's kind of being a villain. And even though we're rooting for the anti-hero. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
So it's
Yeah.
just awesome movie.
Yeah, it really is. It's just so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah, that was my introduction to Matthew Broderick, and it was a good introduction. Uh, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's actually a great film to me. I truly enjoyed it too. What about you, Steve? Who are you blaming on, and what kid are you blaming it on?
Um, I am blaming it on a 12-year-old girl named Abby, who's not quite 12 years old. So,
Wow. Talk about piling on.
yeah, it's about to get more piled on here in a second. Uh, the movie I'm talking about is called Let Me In. Chloe Grace Moretz is the star of it, and she plays a 12-year-old vampire. And this movie does a really it starts off it's in New Mexico in 1983. And there's only one thing right out the gate that bothers me about this movie is there's snow. And I'm like, it snows in New Mexico? All right, learn something new every day.
It does, actually.
So
It
but
does
it's
snow in New Mexico. It has
I
snowed
know.
quite a
It
bit.
does.
Well, it starts off with a disfigured man being taken to a hospital. Police are trying to get him to answer questions or anything, especially questions about a recent murder that's been going on, or recent murders that's been going on, but he's not talking. Then it flashes to 2 weeks earlier. You know, the great, hey, we're going to give you the middle of the movie. Bye. Moment for some of them to do. And the rest of the movie really focuses on a 12-year-old boy. Whoa. Sorry.
Oops.
Is that the 12-year-old
A
boy?
Yeah, a 12-year-old boy named Owen.
Is that the 12-year-old boy right there in
No,
With the
that is the
balding.
critic. Yeah,
Having-
the balding 12-year-old boy. Denote why he gets picked on a lot. But no, this is really a very tormented child. He's got 3 bullies at school that are just the absolute worst. And
Oh, we lost Steve for just a moment there. He's placed us on mute.
This is what happens when you're on the bleeding edge of the internet
That's right, and live.
and live.
Well, why don't we go into another movie while we're waiting for Steve?
Well, why don't you go into one, Greg?
Okay. Well, the movies that I chose for my portion of the show are the movie Oliver and Harry Potter. Now, there's a series of Harry Potter movies, but I'm only focusing more directly on the original movie, the first film. And then the other movie is Oliver Twist, which is, or I should say Oliver, which is a musical that is derived from the book Oliver Twist, which is written by Charles Dickens. Um, let's talk about Oliver first. One thing about Oliver is the essence of this film is we have a young boy who is in an orphanage,
Well, I
and
blame him for that.
um,
Oh,
he
sorry.
comes into the orphanage in a very precarious, uh, I don't know, peculiar way. He's actually sold into the orphanage. And so, while in the orphanage, he's trying to get along with all these strangers, these little kids who are, a lot of them are bad, and a lot of them are at least, if nothing else, horrible and bad to him. And then he's not only being bullied by the kids, he's being bullied by the directors inside the orphanage. Um, um, this is one of those situations where it's spare the rod and spoil the child. No, it's spare the child and spoil the rod. No, it's just beat the kid with the rod. Period.
Yeah, it's abuse the child.
Abuse the child. Abuse. Horrific abuse. So it gets to a point where, and this is probably a very poignant part of the film, and one of my favorite parts of the film, and it's when Oliver, after getting such a small portion, just like all the other kids, he's so hungry. He's so hungry that he picks up his bowl and he walks toward uh, the what do they call them, the quartermaster, and he walks up there and he says, "Excuse me, sir." This is where I get my acting gig and they'll pay me millions of dollars. "Excuse me, sir. Can I have more?" And they go, "More? You want more?" Did you hear that? He wants more. Well, obviously, they're not giving him nothing. So here's where we blame the child. Now, had Oliver not said more, there wouldn't have been any fuss about anything, would there? Everything would
Well,
have
the
been
deplorable
fine.
conditions, the abusive attitudes, but other than that, I would have been fine.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It would have been just, status quo. But no, not Oliver. No, he's going to get all the kids in trouble. So there's no portions for anybody, and everybody's got to go to bed, but not without getting a lashing first.
But at
I,
least he
I
was the
blame
most
that on
popular kid
Oliver.
that day.
Oliver was the instigator. He was the mob leader
Well, at least he was popular. I'm
for
sure the
like a
kids loved him
moment.
after that.
I'm just saying, he got so popular that he said, I got to get out of this place.
Right.
So Oliver runs away. So now he's on the street. He has nothing. He's still hungry because he didn't get the portion, by the way. And so these professionals pick him up. Now, what I mean by professionals? Pickpockets. Professional pickpockets. Now, you think, hey, he gets in with the pickpockets, everything's going to be good. They take him back. They introduce him to their head leader dude. Head leader dude has this chick that works with him. He's in love with the chick, but she doesn't like him. She's just there for the boys, keep them out of trouble, and try to help them along because this guy is kind of mean and ornery. But hey, he's going to teach you how to pickpocket. He's going to give you a livelihood. But just like any pickpocket master, he wants a little bit of the money that you get. So what does Oliver do? He graciously comes in and is a part of the fold. And of course, the young lady falls in love with him the most because he's the cutest one. The artful Dodger, who's a character in the film, tries to teach Oliver the best way to pickpocket, but Oliver's not kicking it. He's not getting into all this stuff. And so what happens? He's the catalyst of harm again. He can't teach kid, so he's a troublemaker. The girl says, "No, don't hurt the child. He's a wonderful kid." And what happens? She gets beat because of Oliver. Blame it on Oliver. He's the one causing all the turmoil. Now let's be honest. He doesn't mean it. He's just Oliver. I just wanted food, and then I had to run away from the orphanage. I just wanted everything to be good. I want to be a good pickpocket, but it's not for me. So what does that do? It
You,
causes more turmoil
you're
and more
completely
conflict.
distorting the meaning of this movie,
So, in my opinion,
in my opinion.
Oliver is a wonderful film. It's a great musical, wonderful music. But here's a situation where you blame it on the kid because if Oliver was more self sufficient, if Oliver's life was a little better, to be honest, all these horrible things wouldn't be happening around him. He's just trying to be a good person. He's just trying to be a better person. He's just trying to survive. And yet all the things happening around him are counter that. It's causing turmoil for anyone and everyone who seems to be involved with the young man until later on in the movie. But I'll let you see that movie. This is Oliver Twist, 1968. This is one of the better films out there, that is an adaptation from a Charles Dickens novel, and it's one of my favorite. Um, so you should take a look and give Oliver a chance. Now I've kind of pulled some craziness out of it in my own little crazy way, but it's really a viable film. It's a really enjoyable film, and to see the journey that Oliver's on in itself is a very interesting thing. But to fit into the scenario of what our theme is, it's because of Oliver that all these crazy things are happening. Got to blame it on the kid. Got to blame it on the kid in this one. So, Steve, welcome back. And
Hi.
so let's go ahead and continue with your Chloeism and in her film as the vampire.
You don't want any
Okay.
comment on your film, Greg?
No, because if you comment on it, then you say some things, and then I'll have to be the catalyst. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I just wanted to give Steve an opportunity. That's all.
Okay,
God,
that's
Karen.
fine.
Karen, do you want Oliver to get beaten more? Because that's what you're doing.
Well,
You know what, Oliver? I'm gonna need you to stand on the table. I'm gonna beat all these kids in front of you till you feel bad. That's exactly how that movie goes.
oh, well, yeah, it is. I mean, I myself would blame Bill Fagan and Bill Sykes, but that's just me.
You're
the
not
actual adults
completely
who
wrong.
do all these some of the terrible things, and the head of the orphanage, Mr. Bumble, I
Sure,
shall scream.
sure, that seems like that would be the thing to do. But here's the thing: what's Oliver's part in it?
He's just the kid.
Yes, but he asks too many questions.
Hmm.
He wants too many things.
Hmm.
I think Oliver's a little selfish.
Hmm.
Yeah.
More.
More, yes.
More.
Please, sir, may I have some more? And then he knows you never ask for more.
You're
But
gonna.
he really was. I mean, he was
You,
warned before taking what seemed like the longest walk in history
It
all the
was.
way up to the front of that orphanage. Like, he could have made it to Tibet faster, I think,
Because he knew what was
to,
coming.
than to the front of that
And isn't,
orphanage.
well, let's think about it. Isn't that kind of, if you know it's coming, isn't that a little premeditated?
Yeah, well, maybe. Well, the kid was hungry. I mean, geez,
They
Louise.
were all hungry, but here's the thing. They were a little safer before you went up there, weren't they?
Okay, but those adults didn't have to take that approach. They could have just punished Oliver and rewarded the rest of the children for not asking, but they didn't do that either.
So we
evidently,
don't
you're
blame
forgetting
Oliver for
what
starting
year
the
this was
ruckus?
set in.
Say again?
It was
I said
1986.
evidently. Yep.
1968.
1968. Thank you.
Same thing.
Beating kids. Beating kids is a religion in 1968. Let's be honest.
You really think so?
Well,
Hand to God.
film picture,
Hand to
I mean,
God.
the
How
film
would you know?
picture
You weren't even a star in the horizon in the Milky Way in 1968.
I read
1968
books.
was when the
You
film
read
was made,
books.
but we're talking
I
about
read books.
the 1800s when this took place.
Oh, 1868.
See? See? It's generational. Beating kids is generational.
That's for sure. Well, I agree with you. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies too. Remember I've watched it many times. It's the songs are amazing.
Yeah.
Um, this put Mark Lester, the young boy who played Oliver, on the map in terms, briefly, he was like the star. But the person who tended to have more staying power was Jack Wilde, the boy who played the Artful Dodger.
Right. In
He
fact,
was
Jack
just
Wild was in one of my favorite TV shows, which was HR Puffin
HR
stuff.
Puff and stuff. I love that show.
Yeah.
So I was just like a total fan of Jack Wilde. I just absolutely loved him. And Oliver Reed just played Bill Sikes with such menace that you couldn't wait for something bad to happen to him. I mean, he was like walking evil incarnate. And
Faking wasn't a Boy Scout either.
but he had a heart, which is more than I could
That's
say for
true.
Bill Sykes.
But yeah, but Bill Sykes, yeah, his character was truly the menace, as you alluded to.
Yeah.
Nancy was just the perfect person. She was so loving of all the kids, especially Oliver.
Well, I
But
wouldn't call her perfect. She was
but
just such
but
a
it
victim.
wasn't a good situation. It wasn't a perfect situation, and her love for him caused a lot of things to happen. Um, but if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. Oliver is a wonderful film, and it's, as I alluded to, it's from Charles Dickens' book Oliver Twist. Um, Good stuff.
Yep.
So, Steve, I'm sorry. Let's get back to your film.
Oh no, that's fine. um, but let me see if I can remember where I
So the
finished.
name of the film is Let Me In.
Yeah.
She's a vampire.
Yeah, she's a vampire. She's a vampire. You get to that pretty quickly, but there's little nuances that go through this movie. Well, after the disfigured man and everything happens, 2 weeks earlier, we visit this boy named Owen, who becomes really the main character of this movie. And he's unhappy, he's lonely, he's a 12-year-old boy who's neglected by both of his divorcing parents who are in the middle of all that mess. And he's bullied at school to a point where it just becomes a bit ridiculous. But there's three kids who can't help but just torment and torture this kid. And finally, he goes out. He lives in an apartment complex, and he goes out into like the quad area, and there's this jungle gym looking thing, which is it's not quite. It's more like it's got a first level and then a second level, and it's got all the bars and everything on it, but it's easy to sit on. And he sits out there and he's playing with a Rubik's cube, and all of a sudden this girl walks up and sits down, and is they kind of go back and forth, and he notices she's not wearing shoes. Like, there's a foot and a half of snow on the ground. Snow's blowing everywhere. The wind is kind of a little kicked up, and this girl is not wearing shoes. And he just puzzling goes, "Aren't you cold?" She goes, "Nah, I really don't get cold." That's when you really first start to suspect something. He's like, "Oh, it's 12 degrees outside." So she moved in next door to Owen with a parental figure. And one thing you see out of this parental figure is he goes and abducts people for her. And the first kid you see is a local teenager that he abducted and then drags into this wooded area, flips him upside down, and drains the blood out of him. Which is just like, whoa, into a jug with a funnel. Like, this was very well planned. But a car goes by, he gets like skittish and runs away. When he runs away, he drops the jug, and it just starts spilling out all over the ground. He runs off. Well, Owen back at home can hear yelling from the other side. And is trying to figure out what's going on and everything, and it just sounds really bad. Well, then they get closer and closer as the movie's going on. He asks her age, and she says 12. And at one point, he really, really kind of demands to know her age. And she goes, "Really? I'm 12. I've just been 12 for a really long time."
Like hundreds of years.
Like hundreds of years. And actually, Owen discovers a picture. One of those, you sit in a photo booth and you get like 4 pictures taken out, you and your friends making funny faces. Well, it's her and her parental figure, except her parental figure is about 12. So you really, really kind of start seeing everything then. At one point, she uses her 12-year-old innocentness to trap her prey. At one point, after her parental figure doesn't bring her the blood that she needs. And then it goes into this kind of romantic where he's trying to get close to her. He wants her to become his girlfriend. Of course, he still doesn't completely know the vampire thing or anything like that. And they go out, they do things, and she just reacts weirdly to like foods and people. He tries to make a blood pact with her once, and that's when it clicks. You know, with blood pacts, you cut your finger, somebody else cuts their finger, and they, shake hands or however it all works out. And she basically drops to the ground and is just like, "Oh, hey, blood." And she changes. And the interaction between the two, between Chloe and Cody, which Owen and Abby, is really innocent and playful, and just interesting between the two of them, as she's still, she's been on this planet for years, but she's still a 12-year-old girl. Right. Like, she's learned different things, but she's also been staying in hiding. She hasn't been picking up on, the natural progression you would while growing up. So she's still technically a kid. And this also, I really want to mention this. There's one thing in vampire movies, all the vampire movies, that they say, but they gloss over. And that's the fact that where the title of the movie, Let Me In, comes in. Vampires cannot enter premises.
in the show.
without being
Unless they're
invited with
invited.
a specific without being invited in.
Right.
It's overlooked and it's glossed over by so many different movies that try to cover vampirism and anything like that.
Yep.
And it actually answered in its own way, its own unique way, what would happen. So after Owen pretty much figures out that she's a vampire and is extremely scared of her at first, more shocked than anything, he leaves. Well, she comes over and knocks on the door and goes, you have to let me in. He goes, well, what if I don't let you in? What if I don't say it? Can't you just come in? He opens the door. She walks in. She gets into the living room area, turns around, and you start to notice it a little bit before then. She starts shaking. She starts convulsing a little bit. And then blood. Just like it's a torture for her to not be allowed into the home. So and I don't know if they try to do this in very many other movies, but it's just interesting of how torturous it is for them not to be accepted in a way. So eventually he grabs her and he's just like, no, you can come in, you can come in, you can come in, and then it slowly starts to stop. And the questions go on from there. But the ending is actually really, really interesting, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody that wants to watch the movie. The movie is on Netflix, so go check it out whenever you're done with this, watching us. And they're back and forth for the setting, which is in 1983, is really exciting, and the bullies get it in the end. It's very, very expected in the way for torturing this kid the way that they have, but it's also awesome, and you don't get to see it till after it's already done. It just happens. You get to hear it, which makes it even better. So Karen could watch that up to the point where Karen is just like, oh,
Well, thanks for the shout out.
I think that was Kenny. Yeah, oh, that was Kenny's right arm. Awesome. So you could watch that part, Karen, and then once you get beyond that part, just stop watching. You don't want to see the after.
Okay, no,
that's not for you. Greg, you want to see this? It's insane.
Well,
Anybody out there that wants to see anybody else want to see obscene brutality, go to the end of this movie. But it does have an interestingly happy ending for the story that it's been trying to tell. And I feel like it's an underrated film that needs a little bit of attention. And it really is. I don't think it was Chloe's first break into being a huge main character, but it was a showing of her, a little bit of her range as being a young actress and moving forward.
So she did this before she did Kick-Ass?
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, why don't we move this along? We're getting a little long here.
She did it right after Kick-Ass.
Right after Kick-Ass. Okay.
No, it was actually in the same year. I apologize.
Same year. There you go. Well, what other movie did you have, Karen? And
my second movie is Witness. It's a 1985 movie starring Harrison Ford, Kelly McGillis, Joseph Summer, Lucas Haas, and Danny Glover. And this movie is Viggo Mortensen is also in this movie. And I would, along with Alexander Godunov, who I kind of want to give a shout out to because he was just, he passed away at an early age, and I think he was in his 40s. And he's just an amazing ballet dancer. Right. So I was a fan of his long before he showed up in Witness. But anyway, this story is about why I blame this on the kid is what the story is about. This kid who apparently doesn't know anything about avoiding public restrooms really needs to go to the bathroom. And he's in the the main train station in Philadelphia. He's Amish, so's his mom. Kelly McGillis plays his mom, and Kelly McGillis and who plays Rachel, Lucas Haas, who plays Samuel, they're taking the train to Philadelphia or they're taking a train in Philadelphia to visit her sister. This is something approached with great trepidation because they're Amish, and being out amongst what are, sneeringly referred to as the English, not a good thing. Fraught with danger, being amongst the English. So the general sort of goodbye, it's not goodbye, it's, be careful out there amongst the English. In other words, don't get corrupted, don't get sucked in, don't get pulled in to their way of life. Be on your guard because they're crazy. And Amish are the only people that you can really trust. So with that admonition, off they go. Well, Lucas Haas, the Samuel character, like I said, needed to go to the washroom. So, and his mother couldn't go with him. So he goes into the restroom, and while he's there, a couple of men come in, and this other man comes in, and two of them brutally murder another man. And Lucas Haas, or Samuel, sees the whole thing and makes a sound. And the murderer, one of the murderers, who's played by Danny Glover, hears a sound and starts looking in the men's bathroom for some evidence of where this noise could possibly be coming from. But Samuel is really smart, and he finds a way to sort of hoist himself up so that his feet cannot be seen underneath the stalls. And the door, Danny Glover's going by, pushing doors open, looking underneath stalls, but somehow he misses Samuel. And Samuel and Rachel, need police protection, and that's where Harrison Ford comes in. So they find Harrison Ford somehow, and I won't go into how they find each other, but they come across Harrison Ford, and they prevail upon him to help them. And he says, "Oh, okay, yes, I will look into it." Well, they're questioning Samuel. They're giving him these books of mugshots. Was this the guy? Was this the guy? Guy's not there. But then Samuel happens to look up at a board that has a newspaper article that shows Danny Glover, he plays John McPhee, shows John McPhee accepting an award for being like one of the most outstanding officers in Philadelphia. And Samuel points to him. That's him. And Harrison Ford's like, what? And it's like, that's him. And and this kid is absolutely sure. So now Harrison Ford's like, okay, I wonder what's going on here. So he starts getting suspicious, and he mentions to his boss, who's played by Joseph Summer, I think there's something going down, because I think John McPhee is involved in some sort of drug, side business or something. And and he's threatening, people, we have witnesses and blah, blah, blah. And his boss says, which is, now the fix is in. The boss is like, okay, you keep that on the down low. Don't say anything, because I want to look into this a little bit more. Code for, I'm in on it too, and you're not screwing around with me. I'm in it for the money. So we better make sure we get rid of you. So, of course, Harrison Ford's on his way to the car, and guess what? He gets set upon by his cop buddies, who beat the crap out of him and shoot the crap out of him too. So Harrison Ford realizes, I'm not safe in Philadelphia. I've got to get Rachel and Samuel out of Philadelphia. So they go back to Amish country, and that's where the movie really begins. here's why I blame it on the kid. The kid doesn't know that using public restrooms is a total no-no, so we need a little intervention there. And two, if he hadn't remembered that John McPhee, who was like the most decorated cop in Philadelphia history, was really like a murderous thug, none of this crap would have happened. So because he recognized him, now he and his mother are on the run. They have to run back to Amish country. Harrison Ford gets shot. They're hiding. They're hiding in Amish country. And the Amish are not too crazy about Harrison Ford being there. And there's threats of like shunning and reprisals all around. And Alexander Goodenough kind of pissed off because he's got the hots for Rachel, but Rachel's kind of looking at Harrison because after all, he did save her life. And none of this stuff is working out the way it's supposed to. Thank you, Samuel. Thanks a lot. If you had just hadn't been to the bathroom, none of this stuff would have happened. So that's why I blame it on
This is why your dad tells you to hold it.
This is exactly why your dad tells you to hold it. And
I have a rebuttal.
What rebuttal could you possibly have?
Well, obviously, there's been a misnomer here. Because we know, all of us know, especially anybody in moviedom knows that the most decorated officer in Philadelphia history is Virgil Tibbs. I'm just saying. Okay? Detective Virgil Tibbs. How does he make that money? He's a police officer. The detective.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yes, well, anyway, my movie Witness was directed by Peter Weir, who did, I think, a great job. And I think he was nominated for Best Director. And this movie enjoyed a great deal of, goodwill in the industry. It won for Best Writing and for screenplay written directly for the screen. Earl Wallace won an Academy Award, and William Kelly won the Academy Award, as well as Pamela Wallace. And it was nominated for Best Picture, didn't win. Harrison Ford was nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role, didn't win. Peter Weir was nominated for Best Director. It was also nominated for Best Cinematography and Best Music and Original Score. One of my favorite parts was where there's this scene in the barn, because Harrison Ford is forced to hide out in Amish country now because the corrupt cops, his boss being among them, are now, hunting him down, because now not only is Lucas Haas a witness, Harrison Ford is a witness, and they've got to kill him before he completely screws up their drug deal and all of the money that they plan on making. So they're frantically looking for him, and Harrison Ford decides, well, the best way to hide is to go to Amish country. Who would think of looking for me there? So he goes there. I mean, and he's injured, and basically it's all he can do to make it to Amish country before he just falls out. And so they nurse him back to health, and then he just kind of gets, he learns more about their way of life and about how they survive, and how these traditional people survive in a very fast-paced and sometimes cruel world. There's this one part where Harrison Ford is dancing with Kelly McGillis, which is a total no-no, and he sings a song by Sam Cooke. What was that song? Don't know much about history, don't know much biology. Mm-hmm. That song, I can't remember the name of the song. What a wonderful world this would be. Yeah. So it's kind of sweet, because Harrison Ford can't sing worth anything. But he was, but he was sort of trying to sing, but not really trying to sing. Like, he's like, I know I can't sing, but I'm just going to kind of singy talk this part of and that was like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, it was like, that's about how it would really work out in real life, because you really can't sing. So But anyway, it's a very well, it's taught. The movie's very, very suspenseful. And my favorite person in this movie is Danny Glover. Oh my God, he was so sinister. I mean, he literally put I mean, he had the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. And this was before Danny Glover was well known outside of the industry. I mean, he was certainly well known enough to score this part, but it wasn't like he was a household name, not at all. This was sort of a supporting, like a relatively small supporting role that he turned into something totally, completely memorable because he just brought all of his acting chops to bear in creating them one of the most sinister villains I've ever seen in movies. I mean, it's still, 30 years later, it still can make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So kudos to him for that, and kudos for the writing. And and Kelly McGillis was also really good. And this movie put her on the map. She was a Juilliard graduate who really could name her price for continuing to star in classical theater productions. She was one of her mentors was the director of the Shakespeare Theater here in Washington, D.C. And they really wanted her to do that, but she got the call to film, and she went with that. And she did very well. It was, her first foray into films was considered quite a successful one. And Lucas Haas was also just, he had the widest, prettiest eyes that you'll ever see on a 7-year-old Amish boy. So, I mean, what's not to love? Except that you blame him for everything, because if he'd just not gone in the bathroom, none of this would have happened.
And you ask what's not to love.
It's an excellent film. It's worth seeing, and it's the kind of movie that stands the test of time.
A quick comment about Danny Glover. I've only seen him in probably a handful of movies where he was really sinister. One that comes to mind is Shooter with
Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg, and he's sinister in that too. And yet he comes off as being this nice guy at first, and then all of a sudden he's like evil. So he's done a few of those, and of course, obviously, Color Purple.
Oh yeah, Mister, where he played Mister.
Yeah, so very good actor though. That's the deal. The bottom line. Yeah, I like Witness too. It's one of my favorite movies also. Karen, so the good choice. I'm gonna bypass my movie. Let Steve get to his next movie, and then we're gonna get out of here. So, what's your next movie, Steve?
My next movie is a 1995 fantasy adventure film starring Robin Williams, Bonnie Hunt, Kristen Dunst, Jonathan Hyde. It's called Jumanji. I myself love to play board games. I play board games with the family. I play board games with friends. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, one of the things that I will be doing is playing board games with a bunch of friends. Any board game that starts off with Adventurers Beware, do not begin this game unless you intend to finish. Stop playing the game. Don't even roll. Do not start. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Shut. Put back in the box. Or close it. As the movie is Jumanji. Of course, they made a remake here recently, which actually I thought was really good.
Oh,
and they did a really good job with it, starring The Rock, Kevin Hart, Jack Black.
that was good. It looked terrible.
It was good. It was funny in the parts where it had to be funny. It hit everything that it needed to hit, and all the characters were on perfect point with everything they were doing. Especially Jack Black playing like an 18-year-old high school girl trapped in a 40-year-old fat man's body.
Oh, jeez.
But back to 1969, which is where this all starts with a kid getting bullied. Let me tell you, I can pick him.
Well, that's his fault.
Right. The kid's name is Alan Parrish, who would be later, as an adult, would be played by Robin Williams, who's running from a gang of bullies. He ends up going to his father's factory, and he ends up causing misplacing a shoe and causing damage to the machine, which actually gets one of the employees at the company fired because the employee, instead of allowing the kid having the kid take responsibility for his actions, decides that, you know what, it's my fault, I'm sorry, and he gets fired for it. Yep, this kid. Well, then they go home, and Alan and his father Sam are having an argument about him attending boarding school. He plans to run away. Checking in. And then his friend who lives down the street, Sarah Whittle, who as an adult is played by Bonnie Hunt, comes over, and they're going through. The kid finds the board game while wandering through a construction site. Tribal drum beats, weird animal noises. He finds the game. He ends up talking Sarah into playing the game. So they figure it'll be fun. Well, they roll, and Sarah reads the first message coming out of the board. And it ends up, nothing really crazy happens, but then all of a sudden, down the chimney, out, and in her hair, bats flying around her, going crazy. Just all around. This kid's like 12. Again, 12-year-olds. God, you can't keep control of them. And funny, bats too, vampires. That's funny. Wow, I didn't even put that together at first. So she ends up running out of the house. Well, unintentionally, Alan rolls the dice. Well, the message that pops up
How
for
was that
him,
unintentional?
he unintentionally knocked the board, which rolled the dice. Therefore, he rolled his turn.
Oh,
And he gets sucked into the game. He gets sucked in, and it says you're going to be in this game until somebody rolls a 5 or 8. 26 years later, in 1995,
okay, this is when you might want to look into the cheating. But okay.
I know, Judy and Peter Shepard move into the vacant parish mansion with their Aunt Nora after the parents died in an accident on a ski trip in Canada. Blame Canada. The winter before.
Well, there are a lot of children in Canada.
I know. Yeah, for real. And there's snow. Oh my God, more connections to the first movie I was talking about. Either way. So they end up going to the attic, exploring, and what do they find? After hearing some drum beats and some weird noises? A board game. Oh. So they pull the board game out.
I thought it would be a jungle.
Yeah, I thought it would be too. It turns out it was Jumanji. They roll the dice thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be awesome." So they roll, and they release a big swarm of mosquitoes. They roll again, and a troop of monkeys go in the kitchen and start tearing everything up. And it's amazing. They're flying around. They're jumping. The kids have to shut the door real quick because there's one monkey doing magic knife throwing tricks. It's amazing. And they're like, "Oh my God, we got to stop this. We got to put it away." But because the rules say you cannot stop until it's done, they roll again. Because one of the kids got doubles. And
oh, no.
She rolls an 8. And what should happen? Crazy noises, running around, insane things. Here comes Alan Parrish 26 years later out of the jungle as Robin Williams with a big bushy beard. It's adorable. As they're going...
Gee, I wonder why you think that.
Right. As they're going, crazy things just continue happening. Alan rolls his. There ends up being a lion in the bedroom, which is awesome. And then they get to the next one, and one of the kids is trying to roll, and it's not rolling. They figure out it's not their turn. So they have to go find Sarah Whittle, who just so happens to live down the street and is now suffering from PTSD because She watched her best friend when she was young get sucked into a board game, which everybody thought was crazy, and was chased out of a house by a bunch of bats.
Oh God.
So it ends up going back and forth, back and forth. Alan ends up, Robin Williams, Alan's character, ends up rolling, and he summons a hunter from the deep wilds of the jungle, and this is where Van Pelt, the great hunter of Jumanji, comes out and starts chasing him from this point on through the movie, and chasing the kids and chasing Sarah, and it just keeps going crazy. And all they're trying to do is win the game. And there's lions and tigers and bears and spiders and demon plants and monsoons and an earthquake that splits the house in half.
Oh my goodness.
And just all
This is a board game?
Yeah, this is a board game. I'm still excited to go play board games tomorrow, which is really weird if you think about it. But
I've got no desire to play board games anymore.
but
Board games.
they end up going through the movie, and it's about them, trying desperately to finish this game against every single obstacle, and not ruining the ending or going too far into it. But at the very, very end of the movie, there's a beach, and there's two young girls speaking French, and in the background, you can hear drum beats. And while they're walking on the beach, you can see Jumanji partially buried in the sand.
Uh-oh.
Nice.
And
like a moth to a flame.
Like a moth to a flame. It seems so perfect. But it's just interesting how they took the concept of board games and applied it to something interesting. The wording on all the adventurous things on the board. For instance, at night they fly, you better run. These winged things are not much fun. And that's where the bats shoot out of the chimney and chase Sarah out of the house. It's just those little things like that that are very well done. And overall, it's a great movie. Robin Williams does a phenomenal job, and the rest of the cast plays their part so well. And it's very interesting how Jonathan Hyde goes from playing the dad to being the man, the hunter that's chasing Robin Williams through this movie. And the stretch that he goes for the two different characters is a really good job by him. So
very cool.
Interesting.
Sounds like a fun movie, actually.
It is amazing.
So let me ask you this quick question: which one did you like better, the early version or the more recent version?
I will always say the early Jumanji is better, and it's not necessarily for the fact that it was the first one. It's for the fact of Robin Williams himself has done such a great job over his career being an ad-lib, being coming up with his own phrasing for situations, changing sentences to make them fit the character better. And I feel like you can, on a lot of his movies like this, you can see where he took it upon himself to adapt his character situationally to everything that's going on while having been out of the real world for 26 years and how things have changed and evolved and how he's still not quite out of the jungle. So I prefer the original.
That's an interesting observation. Because that's pretty hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, sorry to cut it short, but we're kind of running out of time here. Any movies that you have out there that you think would be like honorable mention before we actually take off?
Logan.
Yeah, totally blame it on the kid on that one.
Logan.
Yeah.
Sandlot. Dunstan checks in.
I think for me it would be Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Stand By Me, definitely.
Yep. How about you, Karen? Anything?
Karen?
The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah. If it wasn't for Dorothy, a witch wouldn't been killed with a house. Okay, anyway.
You know what? If there hadn't been Dorothy, there wouldn't have been a tornado.
Okay, well there you go. All those wonderful things. And what's a munchkin? I still don't understand. Well, thanks for hanging out with us here on A Real Point of View. For all of those who are watching, the different movies that were mentioned here, do your best to go take a look at them. They're really good films, and we think you'd enjoy them. Thanks again for listening to us here. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Steve.
Don't forget to blame it on the kids.
And don't forget to blame it on the kids, which a lot of people out there are probably doing anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, but we're talking about movies in this scenario. But thanks again for watching and listening to us. Join us here again on A Real Point of View. Check out our YouTube channel, and we'll be back with some interesting movies and our thoughts on those movies. Thanks again, and have a good night, everybody.